Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Brown, and welcome back to The Mothers, where we talk to industry leaders and change makers who are also somehow raising the next generation. Please take a minute to subscribe and drop a 5-star review wherever you're listening, and follow us on Instagram at The Mothers Pod. Today's guest is a sister in self-reflection and apparently big tech pauses and pivots. Tamara Hinckley is a former director of product at Pinterest, where she worked for 9 years after graduating from Harvard Business School. In parallel, she was also growing her family, which was more challenging than anticipated due to an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's. Confronted by this personal and somewhat isolating challenge, she found comfort and eventually community through writing and sharing her inner experience navigating Hashimoto's and her journey to motherhood with the world. Her writing grew into a popular Substack newsletter called Half Moon Hustle, focused on the intersection of motherhood, ambition, and wellness. Her family also grew as she welcomed 2 girls and grappled with what it meant and would require to have a healthy career, healthy family, and a healthy self. Tamara is one of the more strategically and practically ambitious people I've met. Part of that could come from her immigrant background. Born in Ukraine, she moved to the US when she was 7. Ambition wasn't an ego-driven behavior. Lexi Reese, a prior guest of ours, actually described something similar. As she put it, anyone who is in touch with their immigrant background has a certain kind of drive and a certain kind of hustle. For example, Tamara wanted to be a CEO by the time she was 40. She started her career in finance, first in investment banking and then private equity, before getting her MBA and landing a role at Pinterest in 2016, pre-IPO. As she shares in our conversation, at any opportunity, Tamara would make a point to ask her managers, who were all men apparently, what she needed to do to get promoted. Except when she returned from maternity leave, she didn't want to ask anymore. Through the impossibility and wonder of raising young children, the emotional demands, the mental strain, the isolation, the feeling of empowerment and also disempowerment, something had started to shift in Tamara, and the Pinterest ladder no longer seemed to offer the incentive she was so motivated by before having kids. She became curious about ambition. If I'm ambitious, but I don't want to get promoted, what do I want? She also became curious about other problems in the world and how she could use her expanding personal experience and expertise to help solve them. Plus, she had this growing community around her newsletter, other ambitious women craving the wisdom and connection that she was providing by opening up about her world. As Tamara puts it, it wasn't so much bravery and courage that led her to leap. It was having enough conviction that it was time for her to pursue an entrepreneurial path. And so she did. And now, after what she calls a few months off as a sabbatical, she's setting up a business around this experience, building what she wishes she'd had. Momentum Rising helps ambitious women navigate the transition into motherhood without losing their sense of self, ambition, or purpose. Through coaching, community, and experiences, they empower moms to rise with intention. People say having kids sets women back professionally, but with the right support, Tamara believes motherhood can unlock a new kind of clarity, confidence, and momentum. Not in spite of it, but because of it. And I could not agree more. In this conversation, you'll hear about how Tamara found the conviction to leap and what she's learned on the other side. How she fought against becoming the default parent, or she-fault parent, as she says, through maternity leave, and practical tips for finding clarity, including quarterly goal-setting retreats with yourself, and space to recharge with young kids. She and her husband each get a night off during the week. I'm jealous. Thank you, Tamara, for sharing your journey with us. We're so excited to see your new venture thrive and all the women you support thrive along with it. In the meantime, everyone check out Half Moon Hustle and enjoy our conversation with Tamara Hinckley. Yay, I'm so excited you're here. I've so many things to talk about. I'm sure we're going to get scattered and we could talk for like 5 hours, and maybe we'll have to have you come
But
back.
we'll cap it. We'll respect your time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the context, which I know I shared in some way when we met, but a whole premise being left the Google, and which I know you left the Pinterest, which is one of the many reasons that I enjoyed our conversation and wanted to have you here. But left after having 3 kids at Google and doing all of that just consistently as part of what everyone did, and then left. And I was like, I'm still quite busy, even though I'm not working. And then also just more sitting in the mother world and this caregiving economy that no one in my mind kind of, I keep saying, doesn't give a shit about. I think everyone cares, but doesn't really respect on a level in the way that capitalism respects, which is like, let's pay them and pay us. But anyway, so then in that headspace was kind of craving more stories and examples of kind of from a place of strength, this more integrated view of what it is to be and I have questions for you about this, but you've used this term in your Substack of like this the highly ambitious mother or highly ambitious woman, that usually you see that in a working setting. You only see that woman as her work self at work. You never see the full picture. And how meaningful it is to me anytime that I did see that fully integrated experience. And also how I think powerful from a potential like policy perspective it can be to have, mothers are all sorts of mothers. And I think currently they get a lot of like their mommy mothers, whatever that means, which I find to be kind of like dismissed in these rooms that are trying to make policy decisions and decide what America cares about. So anyways, I was like, let's figure out how to have more of these stories of like the fully integrated woman. I think you even talk about this false dichotomy of career and motherhood, and which I was like, that is what we're kind of trying to explore and break. But so then I was like, how can we have more of these stories of these rock star women that are out there doing incredible things and surprise somehow like raising the next generation? And who could I possibly go on this journey with of like learning from all these amazing people? But V, who was our very first nanny. And I always say anything good about our oldest kid and anything remotely balanced and sane about me as a parent, I think is like started from V, who kind of found joy in what I found otherwise to be very chaotic and stressful. And yeah, so we're on this sort of like journey to learn from all of these folks that are kind of trying to do it all. And then V is here with us, who now has a kid, which is amazing.
Yeah, he's currently asleep on me. So hopefully
I've been loving watching the journey of your baby through the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's been really fun. I feel like he's gotten so used to it now, figured out like when I start talking and put my headphones on, it's time to take a nap. And he's been such a rock star about it. So I'm appreciative for how adaptable he's been. And we've figured it out together, which is really cool.
Yes. Yeah. It requires a lot of flexibility on V's part too. A lot of juggling. And so, yeah. So any questions about what we're trying to get at?
No, I love it.
Okay, cool.
I think this is so needed. And I love that you're reclaiming the word mother in such a powerful way.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much mommy, mama, like all these words, mompreneur. And I think it's so disheartening to see that people take that on as an identity when mother can actually be such a strength thing. So I love it. And I'm really excited to hear.
That's cool to hear. I'll ask you more questions about that too, because I love it. I think some people have connotations of mother in a certain way, but I think reclaiming is what we're doing. Yeah. But we like to start with this question that was a very Google question. I'm curious if Pinterest also asks these kinds of questions of like, tell me your journey. But Tamara, how do we get to where you are today? Which I know has gone through sort of somewhat recent evolution, but I'm curious how you describe your story.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot recently because it's changed. But I think it starts with my upbringing. So as you mentioned, I was born in Ukraine, and my parents and I moved to the States when I was 7. So growing up as an immigrant, I think shaped a lot of what I now understand to be who I am. So part of it, I think, is a big confidence crisis. So when I started in first grade here, I didn't speak a word of English. I had an even crazier last name before I got married. It was Zagorovskaya. Try to spell that as a first grader. And so I just remember like the first year living here, starting over from nothing, but also just feeling like such an outsider and so desperately wanting to fit in, trying to not have an accent when I spoke and feel American.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of my upbringing was kind of that lens. But then the other one was my family and where I come from. My family really values education. So my grandmother, who recently passed away, was a university professor at like the Harvard of Ukraine. And so I have this kind of expectation in my family that you will go to a good school, get a good job, get a higher education degree, like do big things. So all throughout my upbringing, I was kind of like striving for ambition without knowing what that was. And so I think that really led to trying to get into a good college and studying Spanish, which was kind of a useless thing to learn, but I did it because I really liked languages since I spoke a couple already. And then I started my career on Wall Street. So my first job out of college was investment banking, which is a crazy place to be, or used to be, I think, at the time, especially as a woman. I mean, speaking of
Yeah.
role models, there were very few senior women, especially ones who had kids. And the ones that did were at work for 100 hours, just like I was. And so they weren't really seeing their families. And so
Yeah.
I think I got a boot camp in the business degree there in terms of how markets work, and I learned a lot of skills, but just it wasn't a place I saw myself kind of rising. So then I moved from investment banking to private equity, kind of wanted to be more closer to operating, did that for a couple of years, and still just felt like this finance world is really powerful, but I want to be driving impact. Like I want to be on the other side of the table. So then I went to business school at Harvard. And really there, I think I started to think a lot more deeply about this question of like, what does it mean to be an ambitious mom or ambitious woman? I took this class there called How Star Women Succeed. And it was actually a really great idea. I think in practice, maybe it could have been done better, but they brought in all these case studies of women who had big jobs and how they made it work. And some of them even came to class and shared their stories. And I think it was just interesting to see a lot of the examples were basically women sacrificing family for their careers. And I think that was really disheartening to see, but also the reality because it's hard to do both. And so I kind of took that class and was like, that's not going to be me. You know, I can still do it. And so then after business school, I joined Pinterest. Did not think I would stay there as long as I did, but it was an amazing time to be in tech. This was in 2016. It was a pre-IPO company. I was so excited to be in Silicon Valley. I moved to California for the first time ever because I grew up in New Jersey. And the first few years there were great. But I think a big like wake up call for me was when I wanted to have a baby. So my husband and I started trying, and a lot of our friends did too, and everyone was getting pregnant, and it wasn't working for us. And I was just like, wait a minute. I thought that this like kind of happens naturally.
Right.
And so I went to the doctor, and I ultimately got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And I actually had never heard of that before. The one I have is called Hashimoto's. This was like something I never expected. I thought I was healthy. You know, I like worked out and did yoga. And so then I was told like, you have this thing, you're going to have to deal with it. And also we have no idea how and when this is going to help get you pregnant. So that was, I think, like the beginning of my motherhood journey was how badly do you want this? And what are you willing to sacrifice? So that was in 2022 when everyone was working remotely and I felt really isolated. So I just felt really desperate and alone and, wanting this baby and not knowing what I could do to get pregnant. So I went on this whole journey of revamping my diet, going gluten-free, removing toxins. Like I went all in.
No caffeine, no sugar, no, what was the other one that was like that I live and die by? No stress.
Easy.
Also useful.
Sure.
Yes. Who needs these things? No alcohol also, which is now trendy as well. But I saw this and I was like, okay, so we take away everything that makes life worth living in order to live longer. But you're doing it and you're glowing and you're amazing. So anyways, continue. Just giving you shout out because that's hard to do. No gluten.
Thank you. Yeah, It was really hard, but I was just really wanted to have a baby. I really wanted to be a mom. And I think, we go through all sorts of things in this process. And I just really did not want to have to go through IVF because I'm terrified of needles. I will do anything I can before we go down that route. And so luckily it worked after 5 months and I got pregnant. That was kind of the start of my journey. And in this process, I was just feeling like there's everyone I talked to when I mentioned that I had gone through this experience afterward either said like, oh, actually, I'm also struggling, or I know somebody who is, or I know someone with an autoimmune disease. And the more I talked about it, the more I realized there was actually like a community of this that I didn't know existed. So this is what prompted me to start my Substack is I started because I wanted to write about this challenge of trying to have a baby and how hard it can be, and so that people wouldn't feel so isolated. And then that has kind of evolved over time. But I think my first baby, my older daughter, she's 3.5 now, but I don't know, maybe this is the hormones, but looking back, oh, that was so easy. I just have such beautiful memories of us. our parents, my husband's parents all couldn't come visit because everyone got COVID. And we just had these first few weeks of just the three of us bonding, and they sleep a lot. So we were watching TV and we're like, this is great. And then I think the hardest thing for me about my first daughter was the logistics of like the physical element of being a mom, in that my husband, who was an entrepreneur at the time, didn't have any paternity leave. So he kind of went back to work after a month. And I had this amazing 6-month maternity leave, which I think maternity leave is kind of a double-edged sword, because we need federally mandated paid leave. Nobody has it. I was so lucky to have it. But at the same time, I took on this job of default caregiver and parent. And as V very well knows, that's like a whole full-time job, the feeding, the sleep schedule, like every little milestone, I was the one researching the next thing. How do I introduce solids? How do I do this? So it was such a mental load that I didn't expect or appreciate. And it really came to a head when I was going back to work, because I realized like I cannot do this full-time job and my other very demanding full-time job. So a lot of what my husband and I worked through was, hey, how do we divide this better? And we read Fair Play, and that was really helpful for us. But I think that was what I remember being really hard about my first daughter, was how do we both participate equally and fairly and still have some semblance of time back for ourselves.
Yes. The concept of fairness, I think actually V, you and I went deep on this, one of our earliest just V Sarah episodes, of the concept of fair. Well, in general is a questionable term, but when it comes to parenting, it's kind of not fair, I guess. And that's sort of like allowing that to be true and not resenting that is how it goes. I know I was impressed by, you offered like a spreadsheet. This was the most tech ambitious like solution to this, which I loved, but you have this like great accounting concept and offer a spreadsheet that's like line by line by line down to like 10-minute, 15-minute activities, that's what the mental load is. It's all of these, it's 1,000 paper cuts that just take you down. And one individually is not a big deal. So when it comes to sort of offloading them, it's hard to like, seeing it in aggregate in a spreadsheet was like pretty powerful. But I'll save more questions for later, but continue on. So you that was your first kid. Did the second kid, that had different learnings, it sounds like.
Well, the second one, I think in many ways was different. So we started trying sooner than I think we would have, because I just didn't know how long it would take given the first time. And so we got pregnant right away. So that was
of course
a blessing. And it was great. Like I wanted them close in age. So 23 months apart. So that was great. It was like perfect. But my pregnancy was much harder. I was nauseous the whole time. I remember when I was 9 months pregnant, taking my toddler to the beach and like throwing up on the drive home a couple days before the second baby was born. Like it was just a rough pregnancy. And also, whereas, when you have multiple, like there just isn't as much time to rest. So that whole exhaustion that people talk about, you kind of don't have time for it because there's the job and taking care of the kids. So so that was hard. And then I think the thing that was the most difficult for me was after she was born, I just had all these expectations of how doing something the second time would feel. I think about this a lot when I go to yoga, and there's in any, I think, activity or sport, there's often like this concept of the second side. So you'll do like something on the right and then something on the left. And the first time when it's on the right, you're kind of listening to all the instructions. And then the second time you're like, okay, I've done this before. I know what to expect. And maybe the body's a little bit different, but generally like you're following this roadmap. And so I came into this thinking, okay, I've done this before. Usually the second time you do something, it's easier. And I just got hit by like a ton of bricks. The baby was different. And I also had a toddler, so that was different. So she wasn't a great sleeper. I think that contributed to having postpartum depression. And then my older one, she's what people call a velcro baby. So
she knows this well.
What does that mean?
No, she's like breastfeeding right now under the screen.
I think it's wonderful because we're so connected, but it was very hard when
exhausting.
She needed me. Yes, exactly. She needed me. The baby needed me. And my husband, who really wanted to help, just couldn't. And so I felt like I really just didn't have much of a break. And so that was really hard, I think, emotionally for me. The second time was much more of an emotional experience. And because of that, I think I also, when I went back to work and kind of was trying to do all the things, I realized like there's very little time left just for me and myself. And that's what kind of started prompting me to think about like, well, who am I beyond the product leader and the mom and the wife and the daughter and all these things? Because that kind of sliver of time that I used to have very quickly disappeared, and I wasn't able to find it. So I held on to my writing, but it was like something I did once a month. And I just, over the last year and a half after my second daughter was born, I really kind of tried to go back to protecting myself, because I've just realized that everyone will take your time if you don't protect it. So yeah, I think the second baby, now that she's a little older, we're in a really good groove. They're like, it's two girls and they're just amazing and I love them so much. But the second time around, I just didn't expect how hard it would be. And I feel like people told me and I kind of didn't want to listen. And what really helped there was I did a second time moms group, which was in person and all moms with two kids. And it just felt so validating to be able to talk about a lot of these challenges that were so specific to the stage that I was in. And I've become friends with some of those moms now. So I think that like community and connection, especially because it was in person, just really saved me. And I'm really grateful for finding that.
Yeah. And how did you, because you were very open about the postpartum depression component in Half Moon Hustle. And I was noticing in some ways it was kind of became one of the most enjoyed. There was maybe a bit of a tipping point to like be sharing that side of you. I was curious was it weird, cathartic, nerve-wracking to put that out there? And then was it somehow helpful in you kind of navigating your way through that darkness, so to speak, and getting to the other side? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I distinctly remember when I wrote that post. I remember it was like month 3 or 4, still not sleeping well.
Yeah.
I remember having all these thoughts that I was having trouble verbalizing. And so the first time I got an hour to myself since the baby was born, I sat down on my computer and I just wrote down everything I was thinking. It was basically a monologue of my thoughts throughout the day.
Yeah.
I just realized like, wow, I'm carrying so much guilt all day because I feel like I'm not enough to either child.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be enjoying this, but I'm actually not really. And I feel bad about that. And it felt like this kind of weight that I had been carrying in some ways lifted by putting it on the page. And then sharing it, I was just like, this like needs to get out. Like it was almost like a release of like, once it's in the world, it's like leaving me in some ways.
Yeah.
So I didn't really think about it as much as I was a little bit scared. And I think it actually gave me this high of like writing about something so hard and how good it felt to put it on paper that prompted me to start writing again. And so then I started writing a lot more candidly about going back to work and how hard that felt and all the feelings of imposter syndrome. So I think it was the catalyst for doing something that I guess you could call a hobby, though that session definitely didn't feel like one.
Right.
That like reclaiming this part of me and kind of becoming a writer.
Yeah. Is writing something that you'd used before, or did writing sort of emerge through this process?
It still feels weird to call myself a writer.
I love that.
I would never have described myself that way. I mean, I would say I was an artist growing up. I took ballet and all kinds of dance, and I really missed that part of myself. So I think this was a way to tap into the art. But the first year or two of writing felt very painful. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know if I was doing a good job. It was like getting the reps in.
Yeah.
And then once I started doing it, I think more authentically and less about, well, what will people want to read about, and more about what am I really feeling right now? That started to feel like it flows more. And I think also the art of writing, the more reps you put in, the better the quality is. So I'm still trying to figure out what that means and how to be a writer, especially in the age of AI.
Yes.
Oh my God, I know. So you really are writing all those posts. It's really you.
It's really me. Well, the stories are all mine. I use AI as an editor the way anyone would edit something, but there's no way you could prompt someone to write something that personal, right? Like it's clearly me. And I've just started thinking about the world really differently. Like, I think when I started kind of paying attention more to what is happening and how am I experiencing it. There's this book, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and she talks about like being kind of waking up to the ideas all around you and paying attention to the ones that come back to you. So I'm often like lying in bed at night, composing posts in my head, and then in the morning forgetting them and wishing they would come back. But it's like something I just carry around with me all the time now.
I love that.
I love that. Yeah.
Question that you mentioned in the beginning when you were having fertility struggles and getting diagnosed with this autoimmune disease, and then once you started opening up about it, you realized like, oh, everyone is going through this. Was there an intention, like when you started putting your work out there, were you hoping that you would be creating community and like resources for other people? Was that like somewhere in there, or was it more just like, I need to share this with other people because I can't sit with this alone, and like whatever people take from it, cool? Was there like, I
think it was a little bit of both. I mean, when I was trying to figure out like what is happening, like I didn't even know what this thing was. Someone I mentioned at a friend's book club that this had just happened, and someone connected me to a friend of a friend who also had Hashimoto's. It was like the first person I'd ever spoken to who had this thing that I did. And she was a fellow HBS grad. And so she kind of gave me the playbook. She's like, listen, here's what you need to do. Go gluten-free, stop drinking alcohol, do these things, see a functional medicine doctor. And so she was kind of this concept of being a chapter ahead, where she'd gone through it, but recently enough that she could still relate and make me feel better. She was like, it's going to be okay. And I believed her because she had gone through it, but hearing that from someone who had never experienced it, like I just couldn't really relate. And so definitely I wanted to be that person for people to say, hey, this is what I went through. This is what worked for me. I think what I was nervous about is this is like a healthcare decision. I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving medical advice, but I wanted to share the resources that were helpful to me as a way to kind of put them out in the world. And every couple months still someone will send me a friend who's been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. They're like, well, Tamara knows this stuff. And I just have sought out books and resources for myself. And so it's helpful for me once I get a question more than once to just write it down. Because then I can say, read this post. If you have questions, come back to me. But I think it has become a community, but maybe in an untraditional way, in that I don't think these people are talking to each other, but they're all reading and connected through me. And I've thought about like, are there ways to bring them together in a different way? Because I think it is nice when you have something like that you're going through to be able to be with many other people. Again, like I think my biggest thing right now is like in person is where I think the magic happens. So my third company that I'll start later down the road is definitely something around like this Hashimoto's community and bringing those people together and like women's health in general, because I think women's health is so underinvested, so underfunded, and women's health issues have been ignored for ages. And so all these people like myself are going through it and wondering like, what am I doing and how do I navigate this? And it just feels so hard. I think it has to be. So I'm really passionate about this because I think at a time when people are so vulnerable and care so much about, bringing a baby into the world, or maybe just feeling healthy. Like it doesn't have to be about fertility. I think it can be just living with something you didn't know was making you sick and then finding resources to make you feel better. I think that's a real gift. So in some ways, I feel like it's my responsibility to talk about it, but also I really try to walk the line of not being too preachy or like giving advice.
Offering medical.
Qualified to do.
I do agree. I think some of these areas of medicine, particularly women's issues, they're like push unless it's supported within mainstream medical care, which typically it's not. That's what fills up so much of the internet because you're searching for answers. And it probably exists, but there should be some system that just scrubs the internet for symptoms and explanations and Reddit boards to like kind of crowdsource all those solutions. It probably exists already.
Probably ChatGPT, probably
or is
AI.
in process. Yes. I wanted to ask, I wanted to get into this ambition topic because I feel like in some ways, as I was reading your story and hearing you tell your story now, I appreciate that you have sort of this, it seems like growing skepticism of what ambition is really about? And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And maybe it's all of the above, and how that's rooted in your sort of immigrant background. And there's a way that ambition and needing to be sort of quote achieving or building or productive is rooted in, like, immigrants kind of come in with that mindset. Many other populations do as well, but and it's a point of pride. But I was curious, you also talk about in your Substack about how you wanted to be a CEO by 40. Like, you're also not quietly ambitious. I feel like you're also very like upfront, matter of fact, no shame around this, just sort of like from point A to point B. This is a roadmap. I'm curious what you've learned about ambition in yourself and folks around you as you've sat in a lot of these sort of you've achieved the trophies that the ambitious want. And I'm curious at those like award ceremonies, as personally or publicly, if it feels each time, does it feel a little bit emptier, or I don't know. I'm curious. Yeah. Educate me on ambition and what you know as someone who's also sort of a recovering, I don't know, ambitious, but also still an ambitious person.
Recovering ambitious.
Yeah, I would say I'm still playing with what that word means. I mean, similar to the word mother, right? Like, I think depending on how you see it and how you live it, it can be good or bad. So I think for me growing up, it was a survival strategy, right? It was, the immigrant part of it was like, you have to work hard because you need to make money because there's no other option.
Right.
But I think over time, it became this concept of like ego candy, where you're doing it because of the trophy, not because of, the journey. And so, for example, like when I was working in private equity, we would often fly on private jets to board meetings and go to these fancy board dinners. And I remember feeling like really important as a 20-year-old woman in these rooms with all this power. And so I think that if that's the goal, I don't think for me that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think I want more women in rooms of decision making and power and leadership. When I started to be in those rooms, when I made it to director of product, I felt like it was an opportunity to shape the organization and the way I led openly as a mother. For me, that was like the better version of ambition, was doing it for a purpose rather than doing it just because or for these reasons that felt really superficial. So I loudly parent or loudly mother while talking about the ambition, because I think I just am so tired of this dialogue of that it's binary. And so I want to talk about how you can be both. But I think it's very hard to be both at the same time. And this idea of having it all. One of my kind of life values is being present. This like mindfulness yoga background. And being present means you're focused on one thing at a time. So in the micro moment, that's like, if I am working, my kids are not in the room if I can help it, because then I'm multitasking and context switching, and that's draining. But when I'm home, I'm really with my kids. My phone is away. I'm not taking calls when I am picking up my daughter. So for the most part, I really try to like focus on one. But I think in the macro sense, you can do both. It just requires a lot of intention about how you set up your day and what you value. And to me, ambition is wanting to do both at the same time. For me, I think for someone, it might be one or the other. But that's how I'm trying to define it. Is I think it's good or worthwhile if it's for something that's impactful, and I'm still figuring out what that looks like for my next chapter. But I'm proud of the rooms I got to be in the second half of my career, even though I think getting there was driven by ambition in a way that I don't want to do going forward. Yeah.
Well, it is relevant both personally for me, but also in the way that we frame this platform and podcast, like thinking about what's the audience that we're really trying to support, what role models are we trying to put forward, and ambitious is something that I think has sort of been co-opted by, again, I don't mean to blame capitalism all the time, but there's I literally looked up the definition as we were having this conversation, because I was like, let's be specific. Supposedly ambitious people are having or showing a strong desire and determination to succeed. And I think the key is that we can define what success is. I think the problem is there are assumptions about what success means when we use the term ambitious. And I think those are very classically masculine success metrics. And I think within the context of women, mothers, motherhood, there's, just as you've said, I love this term, the sort of reclaiming, rebranding, reimagining what ambition looks like. And that's a lot of what you've written about too, is and it gets a little bit this having it all, but this idea of both striving for things that kind of fuel your own identity, but also trying to do that in a way that, and I would curious how you fill in the blank here, but in a way that allows for balance. And yet you also are like, balance doesn't really exist. It's not really the thing. So what is because a lot of the folks we talk to, there's a lot of, what I'm impressed by is they've like taken control of the nozzle. They're like, you could do all of this, but actually let's decide when and where.
Yeah.
So how do you think about like ambition relative to balance, relative to a different term for balance?
Yeah. I think through this in the lens of yoga, I've been practicing for a long time. And whenever I go to class, I have all these insights about life as the teacher is teaching. And so, people will say like, oh, I want to be better at yoga so I can be better at balancing. And I'm like, that's actually not the point. The point is to be present and to yoga is the practice of intention. Actually, it's about like vinyasa. That word is actually about placing something in a special way. And so that's what I think is how I want to do this, is be very intentional about being in alignment. Like the key balance is actually if your whole body is aligned, right? Your breath.
Yes.
You have your breath, which grounds you. And sometimes it's about the props, like something I've done more as I've gotten older. And I did a yoga teacher training. And the biggest thing I took away was the senior thing to do in yoga is to use props, because that's how you're more aligned. And so I think about this a lot in the context of, motherhood and asking for help. I think we have this view of success as I did it on my own. I'm super mom. And I think that is how you get hurt, right? You burn out or you get an autoimmune disease because you're not sleeping enough. So I think I don't like balance because it implies like this seesaw where they're even. Actually, it's more about like, are you aligned? Are you aligned with in this moment what you want to be doing and what you're doing? And then the next moment that might be different. So I think it's like, the concept of mindfulness is paying attention. And for the talking about what we were sharing earlier about ambition, I think we can get into this like ambitious hamster wheel of just moving forward through inertia. Saying, okay, I want to be a CEO at 40 and doing that, and not stopping along the way and saying, wait a minute, does this still fit?
Yes.
And I think after becoming a mother and having this new priority in my life, I've really thought about, wait, is that still the goal if the path requires these sacrifices, or maybe there's a different path? And so I think a lot more now about finding my momentum, which is about knowing where you're going and then being very intentional about getting there. And I think in some ways, having my second daughter broke me down, but then I think now that I've picked up the pieces mostly, I think I've found this new energy and momentum for finding that alignment and purpose that I didn't have to before, because I could just work all the time and get promoted and think about the next title. And now that is harder, I've kind of re-examined, well, what's a better way, and really thought more deeply about where I want to go.
Yeah. And what did you find? It's a big, someone who barely did it myself, it's a big leap. You leapt off of a well-oiled track to conventional success, if that makes any sense. Which I commend you for, and we're all so brave. But what was that? How did you get yourself ready to take a leap that I'm sure none of us are ever ready for? What was it like on the other side? I would love to sort of air it out, because I think there are a lot of, in this context, mothers, parents, a lot of people that are like, have, for various reasons, I think obviously in this context, like related to having children, kind of awakening to maybe there's something else that I want out of this effort I'm putting forth. So I'd love to like have people hear kind of like the inner version of how hard that is, but also maybe what it feels like on the other side too.
Yeah. Well, I think it started a year ago. I went back to work after my younger daughter was born. And I just remember for the first time in my life, I was kind of going through the motions of re-onboarding and part of that is like, I ask every manager, all 12 managers that I've had at Pinterest, all men, I always ask like, okay, so what does it take to get promoted? Like that's the first conversation I have with any manager. I do it at every, opportunity. And I came back and I was like, I don't really think I want to do that anymore.
So interesting.
Mostly because it just like, it didn't feel like something I wanted. And I didn't want that job or his job. And so then it was a lot of questioning like, well, what if not that, what? Like I'm ambitious. And if getting promoted isn't being ambitious, then what does that mean? And I kind of was thinking about this what's next question. And then in parallel, going through the process of coming back to work, I was just thinking like, this is a really hard thing to be a mom and a person who has a big career. And why does it have to be so hard? And could there be a way to make it better? So like this spark idea kind of came at the same time that I was really like, this is not the path. And what if there's something else I can help solve? What if there was this problem? And specifically, I was thinking about like the transition back to work period, those first 90 days where the advice is basically, it's really hard, it gets better. So I started writing a lot more around this topic, and I started to see people really want kind of advice and support for that. And then as I wrote more, kind of realized, well, actually, this bigger problem of parenting while having a big career also doesn't have a lot of solutions. And so I kind of over the last year became more comfortable with leaving as I became more excited about where I was going. It was less about leaving and more about the destination and kind of pursuing this new entrepreneurial path. But it was really scary. I mean, my husband is an entrepreneur. We have 2 kids who require a lot of childcare. It's maybe the worst time ever to leave my job. To make matters worse, as you saw, Sarah, I left my job in early April, and a couple of days later, what I call tariff gate happened. And the markets crashed. So that was a really hard week. It was definitely kind of a lot of like, am I sure I want to do this? But, I think I needed to go through that month. Like maybe it was a good thing because it really made me dig deep on why I was leaving and what I wanted to do next. And I did this sabbatical term that I call, and I just kind of tuned everything out and did a lot of reflection on what am I letting go of from this chapter, and what do I want from the next one? And so I think it gave me a lot more clarity that I wouldn't have had if I just interviewed for the next job and at the next company. Because it was such a big shift. I was doing a lot of thinking conversations with people who had done something similar. And frankly, like the thing that I tell people when they ask me about this that seems to resonate, which is shocking to me, is I can always just get another job. Like that's always a backup plan. And, maybe it won't exist in 5 years with AI, but I believe in myself enough that I know I can upskill and get a job if I need to. So like, if that's the worst case scenario and I get to try something that's really exciting, I think that I wouldn't regret that. So I think people call it being brave or courageous, but to me, I got enough conviction that this was the time to do it. And really the downside is, I hope I'm not wrong, but I think the downside is actually not that bad. It's just getting back on the track. So why not, try something else?
Yeah, I love that. I also, again, I feel like I read your bio as I was like going through all of your posts, but I learned a bit about your own mother. I was curious about how her role model, you share a little bit about this in your blog, but so you moved from, I'm going to tell you your life story and you can correct me when I'm wrong, moved from Ukraine to the US, following your dad's job. And your mom for a long time couldn't work because she didn't have the visa to do so. So it was essentially stay at home, full-time parent until maybe middle school-ish, and then got a job. And you talk a little bit about what that was like as her daughter to see her in both of these roles. Just curious, like what you absorbed from your own parents, father and mother, about how you, and maybe it's not consciously, but how you wanted to approach parenting.
Yeah, I have incredible parents, and I appreciate so much the sacrifices that they made for me, because we really started over with nothing, and they sent me to college. I could go anywhere I went. And so I think there were different phases where they had to be different kinds of parents. You know, when we first moved here, my dad was the sole breadwinner, so he had to go all in at work. And that, I think, required a lot of sacrifice for him.
Yeah.
Then my mom went back to work. First, she went back to school and got her MBA, and then went back to work. And so then my dad was the one taking me to dance class and kind of filling in.
Oh, nice.
And so I've seen them both kind of in different seasons take different roles. And I think that's something that I really appreciate, is it's always been like this long-term partnership. But it was just the three of us. The family unit is very important. And I think that's a big thing that I take away, is my family and how important it is for us is what I saw modeled by them. When my mom went back to work, I was really, what's the right word to put it? Angry because, again, like, I'm this outsider. We had just moved to a new school, moving from kind of more of like an immigrant town to a more affluent town in New Jersey because the schools were better. And all the moms stayed home and they picked up their kids, and I had to walk home, and they made them cookies, and my parents weren't there. I had to make my own dinner. And at the time I was like, this sucks. I want, to feel like I don't want to be seen as the one kid walking home by myself in the snow. So I was really angry. And I think my mom did her best. And now I would never, I don't feel angry anymore, but I did at the time because it was a really hard time for me. And so with my kids, I think a lot about how they see me showing up, and, how I explain to them why I work, and being one thing I want to do that I think I didn't see as much is like talking to them about it.
Yeah.
This relationship with work and success, it was just kind of assumed, I think, for my parents, because they grew up in the Soviet Union where there was communism and you just went to the job and you did it and there was no choice. And I want to model that there is a choice for my kids, and also that I'm choosing to work and that's okay. And maybe they'll be angry at me the way I was angry at my mom, but I hope that when they're older, they'll understand, because now, like, I think about what a great role model I got to see at both my mom and my dad, and how they modeled, like, sometimes you just got to do what it takes for the family, and that's okay. So it's like a really complicated thing I'm still untangling, but I think I'm grateful that I got that experience now, even though at the time it felt really frustrating.
Yeah.
You also wrote that beautiful Substack that I just read, that one most recently, about how your daughter asked you about work. And I thought that was the most beautiful. It's also almost like after you're choosing to leave, which was a hard decision and at like kind of seemingly a shitty time, I almost imagine a beautiful experience of like defending it to yourself too, and justifying like, this is why I'm doing it and for you, and to be that role model to kind of like, I don't know, give your baby you a second chance to be like, this is what's happening, and having that communication that you lack. That's such a beautiful, I don't know, like healing process, I hope. And I'm sure it's obviously very challenging, easier said than done. But I think that's a really beautiful, beautiful experience.
Yeah, it's so brave to be open about it too. When I left, I joined a little cohort of sort of unexpectedly other women, kind of similar age group, going through at an inflection point, trying to figure out what we want work to be. And there was a lot of people that kind of in this place. I would love to have your thoughts on the idea of a power pause, but it was sort of this like in-betweenish place, which you're actually you have a whole a virtual session about, but there was a lot of sort of inherent shame. Like, one of the big questions was, what should I tell my kids? And what should I tell them that I do? And I thought it was so fascinating. And also it's come up for me too, where it's, again, a reclaiming of, this doesn't have to be a bad thing. In some ways, we can publicly be modeling something that our kids are probably going to like experience it within a kid context or otherwise, of life is long. You realize, if you're paying attention, you realize you want new things. The world is evolving. You can construct your life in so many different ways. This is why I think it's so wonderful that you are kind of coming from such a sort of classically ambitious path, and an awakening that's happening of like, there's not that you weren't aware of these things before, but like that I often don't see someone in your seat that is, I don't know what brave or has enough conviction or has enough data to say that we can try another way. And I think it's just it's important because you're so capable of delivering significant value in other ways, but it's also important that we can role model like taking risk and trying something new and modeling failure. Like I sometimes with this, I'm like, worst case, at least I can show my kids what it looks like for something to fail. And then like for it to, and show hopefully that we're still okay, and that's like from a world of achievement and ambition, like you don't see that. You only see it has to work. And if it doesn't work, you have a crisis.
Totally.
So I think, and you are so reflective and thoughtful and smart about and intentional about what you're doing. It's such a important role model for your kids and for all of us that get to read your content. So I totally agree. And thank you.
Thank you. Well, when I was on my sabbatical, I will use sabbatical. You can use
I love it.
It's great.
Everyone should use sabbatical.
And it is.
Yes.
Sabbatical implies you're going back to work.
Yeah.
I called it work. Like I didn't stop the childcare. I mean, practically we couldn't, but I wouldn't have. And I worked on myself, which some days meant sleeping all day because I was dealing with the sleep debt of having 2 kids in 3 years. But a lot of it was like emotional trauma healing and reading books and just like learning to be still, which was very hard for me as someone who's always, moving and on the go and thinking about so many things. So I think I was doing work in a way that felt really hard. And I wanted my kids to see that that's okay too. One thing that I'm coming around to, somebody gave me this piece of parenting advice. And at the time I was like, I don't know if this is practical, but now I love it. And I'm trying to anchor this. This woman told me she never lies to her kids. And I think about this a lot because actually it's very easy to lie to your kids, especially when they're little, right? It's like when you justify, well, no, there's no more dino nuggets, or you don't eat your broccoli, you can't do this. Or even like the idea of Santa
Dunkin' Donuts is closed. We can't go.
Ice cream truck, the music means there's no more ice cream there.
Yes.
Right?
Honestly, smart. You can lie to your kid.
Yes.
I think in some situations I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Elf on the Shelf. That's really fun. But I'm like, I don't want to lie to them. And so that both in the times when it's easy from a parenting context to just get them to do the thing or not do the thing. But I feel like I want to be more honest. And part of that is around this idea of work and how multifaceted it is. And part of being honest is, like you said, Sarah, failing or talking about making mistakes. My daughter and I have started listening to this. Snoop Dogg has these affirmations on YouTube,
so good,
which are the best. And so every day we listen and then she'll pick one. And today she picked, I learned from my mistakes. And so I see her now when I say something, she'll say, Mama, you got that wrong. And I'll say, I made a mistake. And so it's just like, you got to model that it's okay to be wrong as a parent. And also it's okay to change your mind, right? With this ambition question, like in some ways I'm changing my mind about this very big thing in my life. But I'm trying to live more with that kind of philosophy of being more honest, both with my kids and I think with the world. I write very candidly, and a lot of people I meet will say, wow, I know a lot about you. But I think that's the power in it, is like getting people to talk about the things that are typically behind closed doors or taboo that people may not have access to. And something I'm thinking a lot about in this thing that I'm starting is creating this kind of space or container to have those conversations for women in similar stages. Because I think unless you're just reading about it from someone on Substack, you may not have access to a mom that is, as you were saying, at this inflection point. So what it would look like if we could all be together, kind of the evolution of the mom group that happens when baby comes, but later on when it's less about the baby and more about you and your identity in all these different ways.
Oh, I love that.
There's such an interesting generational shift, I feel like, happening. We actually just had a conversation last week with another mom, Rebecca Love, who was talking about this vulnerability and truth with your kids and not guarding them from things that like is not something that we even experience. And I think that is such a hard thing to actually practice. So I commend you for like doing that, because honestly, sometimes it is easier to lie to your kids and protect them and just be like, mommy's running a company and it's super successful and you don't have to worry. Like, we're always going to be fine. Like, there is something kind of beautiful about being like, I'm taking a risk right now, and maybe it's kind of scary, and ooh, times are really hard right now, and maybe this is a hard time to have chosen to do this, but like, look how we're adapting. And I think that that's so like brave and powerful, and your daughters are so lucky to see that, and the fact that they feel safe to ask, like, that you just had this conversation of like, what is your work and why are you choosing to work, and like how do you justify that time away from them? So I think that that's so beautiful. So I think you say it so easily, but like, I don't know, take a second to like commend you for that, because I think that that is like, we lie to our kids all the time every day, and so like to actually like consciously think about that is that's big and heavy. So you're crushing.
Well, and I also loved, you posted about this too in the Why Mom Works. You were like, they never ask dad why he's going to work. And I do think that's fascinating. It gets, you talk a little bit about gender roles that kind of were fallen into. And I do think one of lofty dreams of this podcast and community behind it is around maybe kind of normalizing share, like joint parental leaves where both partners have the same amount of time, because I think some of these things just sort of are fallen into. But can you share a little bit about how you that initial, I think this came, you said most with your first kid, but like you kind of took on a lot of these micro macro labor of children, and how you tried to sort of course correct. And how are you today dealing with like the mental load and invisible labor, kind of especially now? And I will say this in partnership with you, like in a situation where I'm not earning the same amount of money that I earned before, and that, which has a weird lens that I don't really want it to, but it makes it a little bit less obvious who should be doing that small, annoying task with the kids. But I'm curious if you could like share about how you're kind of grappling with that. Would be really helpful.
Yeah, it is something weird happened when I stopped making money that I felt very weird spending it. And I just felt like every purchase for myself, for the kids, I became a lot more thoughtful. And I think also that could be a good thing, but I didn't expect it. But to answer your question, I think when we first started having this discussion with my husband, he's also a former product manager. So we went like a spreadsheet, take a backlog. We do this like quarterly annual goal setting retreat. And I think we just both think very similarly with systems and structure and writing it down. And I think that has helped us a lot. But I think the danger of the root of fair play taken to an extreme the way we maybe have is that it becomes very much about scorekeeping of like, well, how many hours did you watch the kids today? And how many dishes did you put away? Or, like the tallying up can make it that you're like constantly resenting the person. And, because some of the labor that they're doing, you don't see, and vice versa. So it's always like, well, I'm doing more. And so I think with my second, I had a mindset shift from kind of the scorekeeping to being more of like a team. Just, this is hard. And like, we probably both don't have any free time, but like, how can we get through the day? And both carve out a little bit of time for ourselves. So I try to think about my day more as, did I get, my hour to myself in the morning to work out? And then presumably my husband wants the same thing. And so it's less about like the childcare and the mental load, and more, did we get the space that we need to recharge and to kind of be ourselves? And I think I'm more willing now, especially because I'm in this kind of more flexible role, to like volunteer to do more things with the kids when I want to. So we have this thing that we started doing after number 2, where each of us gets a night off during the week. So Wednesday night is my night off, and my husband does bedtime, like picking the kids up all the way through putting them to sleep, and I get the whole night. And Thursday we switch. And so the girls know too, it's mommy night and it's daddy night, and they love it because it's like branded as this thing. My husband plays a song with them when they do it. So it's like fun for them. But that is something that I think is a better way now of thinking about the mental load, is how can we create the pockets that we need, rather than how do we score keep and keep track of all the work that has to happen.
Yes.
Then I'm coming into the week knowing I have this thing to look forward to, but also not feeling like I have to justify it because I know I have to get all my stuff done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's been a big shift, and I think has made it more enjoyable for us as parents and as partners. Like we try to do more things, the two of us, not just date night, but like get away every quarter for a couple nights and just like make it more about the romance and less about the grind.
The agenda items, the to-do list. Yes.
Yeah, because that's always going to be there. But yeah, I think I'm looking for more joy now in my life, and knowing that it's very easy for it to disappear. I'm trying to lead with that as I think about my schedule, and less about like, how can I be super productive, but more, how can I, the big rocks in my life, how can those be time with my kids, time with my husband, time with myself?
Yeah. Is that how you think about this, like having it all construct that we love to talk about?
Yeah. I think, I have so many complicated thoughts on it. I think when people will say they want it all, they try to do it all, right? And that's just a recipe for burnout. I think I try to have priorities, right? Like there's this metaphor of like the stove with the 4 burners. Like you can only have 2 burners in the front and 2 are in the back. And so every quarter when I do my goal setting retreat, I kind of ask myself, like, what are the burners that are important right now? And so this quarter, it has been my health. And that's part of taking this break and this shift, and my family. And I've had like a lot of family stuff happen in the last quarter that has made it clear how much I value that. Versus in prior quarters, it was my job, and before kids, maybe it was friends or other things. And so I think like you can have 4 burners or maybe 8 if you have a really nice stove and you're doing it all, but like only a couple can have your attention at the same time, or else, the food will burn. So I think it's being intentional and just knowing like, what is the priority list? Like the list can be long, but if you're not going to get through it all. And so do you really want to put so much on that at the end of the day, you feel bad that you didn't get through it? Or I think I feel better if I'm just like, this isn't a priority, even though I would like it to be. And a good example is actually friendship. That has not been a priority as much as I would like it to be for the last couple years. And so recently I wanted to make that more of something I could spend time on. So I went on my first girls trip ever since becoming a mom, because I couldn't before. It just logistically couldn't work. And so I think where we get into this trap of having it all is then we start to feel guilty. Oh, I'm not doing all those things. So like I don't have it all and I'm failing. And I think a better approach for me is, again, this like intention of only a couple things right now. And that can change in the next season and the next shift, and deciding, and then just not beating myself up over it, so that I feel I'm just like owning whatever decision I'm in. And again, like then I have more space for the joy.
Yes. And like the freedom that comes with like, I'm going to do this now, but like 3 months, let's like check in and we can redo this whole thing. It is wildly liberating to just think about like, we're making this all up as we go.
Yeah.
Okay, we have blown through our time. Do you have like 3 minutes for a rapid fire question or two? Okay, I apologize. We're being very intentional with our time here. Okay. If you could go back and tell your new mom self one thing, anything come to mind?
I would tell myself, ask for help nicely. I think asking for help was really hard for me. So, and I kind of held it in. But then when I did, it came out as this like angry, resentful, whether it was from my husband or from my parents, who were all just trying to help. It came out as like, you should have read my mind and know what I needed and done all these things. And I think I would have, gotten better help, or frankly, just like felt better about it if I was more honest, like, hey, I'm just really tired. Can you take the baby? Rather than like, can't believe you're not taking the baby. So I try to do that more now when I ask and it's okay if the answer is no, but kind of leading from like, this is why I'm asking and this is why it's hard. But I think too sleep deprived to do that when I was.
Of course. Yes. Okay. Is there also, this is a like robust question, but is there a theme of things or anything specifically that you can think of that would have made it easier along this journey of motherhood?
I think getting in touch with people who are a chapter ahead, like reaching out to them. Because I think the question I asked a lot, especially after my second was born, was, when does it get easier? Like I kept asking this to people.
Yeah.
And it was actually really helpful to talk to people, again, who were 2 kids, maybe a year or 2 out, who could give me a mental model of like, this is what's hard about this age. This is what's hard
Yeah.
about this age. And I think finding those people was hard, but then also just like asking the questions that I had felt really vulnerable because it felt silly. So I think just being able to relate to somebody who had been through it recently and could give me the specific advice on the thing, right? Like the advice might be different in terms of the sleep or I don't know, like introducing formula was hard. All the things that were hard at those moments, I wish I was able to connect with the people who were able to give me that relevant piece of advice. And I think they tend to be these chapter ahead people. And part of why I've kind of cultivated a community of moms for myself is that I think we're all going through similar things at similar stages. And often someone will be a little bit ahead of the other person. And so then we can serve that for each other. And that's been really helpful, but I wish I had it kind of more earlier too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like, are we all just building what we wish we had? And thank you for doing that. Yes, finding a way. Okay, our last question. Your kids may be listening, or one day they will. Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
You inspire me, and I am trying to make this world a better place for you. So I hope that sometime down the road, you'll appreciate all the sacrifices I made and know that even at the time, they may have felt like me not choosing you. Ultimately, it was all about you all.
Oh, yes. And better for it. Well, amazing. Thank you so much. You have such a rich mind. I want to read more of your Substack. Everyone should subscribe to Half Moon Hustle. And I'm so excited for what's to come in that as well. So yeah, you're doing really great, courageous, well-informed, data-backed things.
Yeah. Congrats on taking the leap. It seems like a lot in your life too. You've been able to like make a decision and check in with yourself and know when something has expired or like no longer serves you. And I think a lot of times we don't like to listen to that because it's like, no, this is the traditional path. So congratulations on choosing to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really nice to be here.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we could have talked for 17 more hours. I feel like she is the end all, know all, be all. Like she's like such an incredible resource and powerhouse.
Yeah.
Highly suggest everyone read her Substack because everyone, I know we talked a little bit about this community and whether that was an intention in creating this online community and how not really, but it was like a consequence to being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And how even sometimes I think like having an online community, it's so valuable because people are willing to be able to be so open and honest and raw because you kind of have this like thing between you.
Yes. Yep.
But everything I read that she had written, I was like, oh, I feel like I've had that moment in this current stage where I'm at of like, oh, complete self-sacrifice and not, nurturing yourself and checking in with yourself. And she talked about the sabbatical that she took and how she like had sleep debt and like catching up on that and all these things and how that's important. And I just, I loved it. And everyone should soak up all of her knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like she's able to marry this very sort of practical, I don't know, stereotypically speaking, like sort of engineering programmer brain with the EQ to like sense and feel and notice and also therefore be able to communicate, I think, in a way that honors the experience and also gives practical solutions for kind of confronting those things.
Yes.
Everyone should find the spreadsheet. Somehow maybe we'll link to it somewhere. It's pretty amazing. It is invisible labor made visible on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And she's, I'm so excited. I feel like what's really nice is people with her background moving into this space more, it will bring a whole other angle to the conversation that hasn't really been addressed before. And I'm really impressed that she took the leap. And as I said to her, I think it's, I don't know, it's impressive for anybody, but I think it really means it's a unique story to have someone like her leap into the unknown, so to speak. And there's so many people like her that need that role model and don't have it. And it's very, I think Lexi Reese said this, see it, and many people say it, but see it, if you can see it, you can be it. And even with Tamara and her kid, like to her kids, the role modeling that she's doing in that way of there's just so much that she does that like takes the power back, I think, whether it's this choice around defining what success looks like, defining what ambition is for her, defining what her priorities are these 3 months, and then let's like reevaluate the next 3 months. It's really liberating thinking, and practically useful. So I'm glad that she's found an outlet or a channel to like bring that to more people. And I'm excited to see where it continues to build towards. I love the idea, like we do have our mommy's group or mommy baby groups, but like what happens when like mom's being reborn?
Yes.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see where she takes that.
Yeah.
What a mother.
She's not like going off of what you said about having more people like her. She is such a beautiful intersection of like arts and sciences collaborating in a successful way. Cause so often when you have those two like very contradicting personality traits where it's like, I need my spreadsheet and my structure and whatever, and like yoga, mindfulness, checking in. Like, I don't really know that I've had a conversation with anyone who is so able to do that. And she had also something I really loved about the way she spoke is like she had such great analogies, like even the talking about being in yoga class and how like it's not really about balance, it's about like the support and being present and intentional. Yes. I was like, that is so true. And even I think something we need to all like get out of our own way about, where like when I'm in a yoga class, I think about the idea of using the block or whatever as it's like embarrassing or
it's a weakness, sign of weakness.
It's a weakness.
Yes.
But I don't think that when I look at someone else using it. I'm like, okay, cool. You know, and it's such a great analogy for life of just like, it's okay to ask for help. And that's going to help you to be able to do that pose or to do that task. What a great thing in practice. I love that.
And I to that point too, I think of this when she says alignment versus balance, it said as someone who's in I would love to go to yoga and I just will never be able to do it. Maybe I don't know.
So funny.
But when I have felt best, it's when I've said this to my own therapist. I'm like, I feel like my head and my heart and my physical body are all like aligned towards or moving in the same direction. And I feel like what happens when you doesn't have to be when you introduce kids, but like in this context, obviously relevant when you introduce kids, you're pulled in so many different directions.
Yeah.
Your heart is in one place. Your head is in the office at work. Your body is not yours. And that process of slowly getting realigned with yourself and your activity, how you're physically existing and how you're mentally and emotionally existing, like such a really, really, really hard exercise to do.
Yeah.
I mean, this is maybe the root of like meditation and all this stuff, but that is, if anyone has had that moment where you're like, now it's all in alignment, you really do. Once you've felt it, you want to get back there. Doesn't mean that you can, but it's good to know that it's there.
Yes.
So yeah. Let's all get aligned.
Next time we talk to her, because we will have her on again, because dang, I have so many questions. But I would love to like pull back the curtain and understand actually how it works that she's able to be present. We talk about this like when I'm doing work, when I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids. And how does one actually do that? Because I'm like, in theory, it sounds incredible, but even with help and even with practice, it sounds difficult. And so I'm curious to hear how one actually implements that and like does that, even with assistance, or even if leaving your phone in the other room. Like, what is the like, what does it actually take? I'd like to dive more into that because
it takes a V.
It's hard.
It takes, for me, it takes.
If that though, like even when you have support, like what happens if the email does come through and you're with your kids and it's dinner time and maybe it is really important? Are there times where you do say like, I'm going to make an exception? And then once you've opened that door, like, how many exceptions do you have? I don't know.
My guess is it's like, it's not a perfect system. It's more like more often than not, when you are in your work hours, are you mostly fully present? And then more often than not, outside of those work hours, are you like mostly present with your kids? I mean, Lexi Reese was she was like, when you get home, put your phone away.
I know.
Just do it. And I keep thinking about that because I want to do that too. But I think it starts. there's help that's required, and then there's also like the structured time
Yes.
to say these are my work hours, and within those work hours you have help, so you're I don't know how you're present anywhere anytime be when you have your child with you all the time. I think once you have space, this will feel less impossible. It's hard. Like you're
right
always
now, literally, I'm like,
because it is.
How are you guys doing that?
Yes.
But I still imagine, like, with support, like you have support, and still sometimes your kids are homesick, and then I need to check in upstairs, even though like I am working. Like
Yes.
that is difficult.
And when that happens too much, I get really not nice.
Which is fair. Yeah.
No, it's true. It's very true. It's like tolerating the exceptions. I think again, it's sort of like Google's favorite metric, directionally true, that mostly when we are in our work zone, most of the time the kids aren't also there.
Yeah.
But it is not an exact science.
No.
And I think who was it? Betsy Riley too. She was like, and I heard Tamara say it as well, this idea that like when I'm with the kids, like I can't be doing it all at once. I can't have my kids with me while I'm also trying to do work, which is what you are trying to do all the time. And I just can't. That's when my my head flies around, because I feel annoyed, stressed. I'm not cool as a cucumber in that setting. And but again, you're right. There is always, Tina Matera said this too. Like, to me, it goes back to the help and like childcare, because when you have childcare that you don't need to check on, that's when you know, okay, I can go to work and I can basically turn off the rest of my brain for a little while. Like inevitably you'll be like between meetings signing the kids up for summer camps and like buying the next size diapers and all this stuff. It's just less. And it's not that it's almost like it's impossible to expect that you're 100% focused on, let's just use the example, 100% at work, 0% of your brain is with your kids. Like I think that will never be true. It's more what's the acceptable threshold where you can be who you want to be and function as you want to function in a work setting. Is that 5% of your brain is still with your kids? But
also
an endless balance, or not balance, alignment.
Stop using balance. It's not. Stop trying to make balance happen. It's not enough. I also think help can come in different for obviously the most obvious and like probably biggest help would be that like childcare, and I look forward to whenever that happens. And I think it also shows up in the community, just acknowledging that things are hard. Like I notice if I'm venting to my mom's friend group about XYZ, like whatever, even them just being like, oh my God, same, or that happened to me, whatever. Like that also helps so much. Like I'm like,
that's so true.
I don't feel so shit anymore or whatever. Like honestly, just the verbal like acknowledgement and confirmation of like, oh my God, I tried to do that and it didn't work or whatever. That's so major. Going back to how important it is that Tamara is like putting out the Substack. Like even if one mom in the middle of the night, it's 2 a.m. and she's feeding and she's scrolling through and reading and seeing, my daughter questioned about my work and whether it's, important enough to like be away from her and feel seen in that moment. Like that is also so helpful and validating and important.
Oh my God, totally. That actually brings me to my joy, which I'm going to jump on because it's basically this point of like the little things being noticed and like how much that means. And maybe you and I are helping in this regard too.
Sarah, obviously
someone reached out
light years away from that. I'm like, we literally solved everything. I'm like,
yes. So this one was a listener who's now my favorite listener texted and said, your questions to your pod guests are those quiet questions I imagine a lot of us mamas are scared to connect / relate about. The content is honest and real, and you honor the beauty and angst and the quote, I can't do all of this well enough position we constantly find ourselves in. There must be more talk about this, and you're paving an open and real space for these conversations. I'm excited for more.
Aw.
Cool?
Yes.
Joy. That brought me joy.
That's
I love
major.
hearing from the darkness that that anyone that it's resonating.
You killed me.
I know. But for real, I think it's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
And like it does just give fuel to what we're doing, which I think is a lot of this, like bringing out into the light, so to speak, like what a lot of us are grappling with and how much it helps ease resentment, anxiety, anger, whatever it is, to just have it be aired out and acknowledged and seen.
Yes.
Solved. Maybe we'll solve it then later, but like, let's see it first.
That's right.
Yeah.
Aw.
I know. Okay. Any joy for you these days as you're grappling with a fevering child?
Yeah. Our joy is I'm going to get him out.
Yeah.
Not you stuck in the high chair. You're gross.
No.
Covered in shredded cheese right now.
No.
My joy is that tonight in like 30 minutes, we're going to go to our new place that we're moving to and meet with like the community like leaders and just like talk about stuff. And I'm so excited because I connected with this woman on the playground yesterday who her name was Sue, which was also my mom's name. And she also worked at a toy store when her kids were in school. And just like we had all of these like beautiful, crazy, weird, like, I don't know. I was just like, I was meant to meet her. But she was with these two kids who, long story short, I guess the town that we live in took in, I don't know what the correct like PC term of this is, supported 5 Afghani families that were coming here for like safety. And the guy who built the home that we're moving into apparently has been like imperative in supporting these families and like housing them. And it was just such a beautiful reminder of like, that's why we chose to be here. And that this is a town that like cares about its people and like wants to support the community and like give back and whatever.
Yes. It's a town and a community in alignment, maybe we could say. Yes. So, good.
That's us. That's my joy.
You are a like tireless pursuer of joy. I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed.
Baby. Every day. Find your joy.
Even while someone's crying. Okay. Let's go crush our lives. Everyone's amazing. Everyone's doing a great job.
Joy.
I'm very impressed by everybody.
Go get
redefine your own ambition. Go get an alignment. Go grab that block so you can do whatever yoga move you need to do. Yes. Seek that support. Ask for help nicely.
Yes.
All right. I love you, V. Good job. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and we can reach even more rock stars like you. The Mothers is a production of Backline Media, shining a light on those who carry the team.